Hey, it's good. Get back safely. I probably will. We haven't yet. Did you have a good time? Saw your pictures with the little kid. Is that your nephew?
Oh yeah. Expensive, but not really cheap. Or no. Yeah, like you can buy just another power cord, and that's really all your.
Yeah,
I mean,
pretty much.
It gives you all the connections. On the
I'll give you a few extra USBs, whatever.
Yeah, but it's not worth it. It's really not worth it. You can buy a USB dongle thing.
Yeah.
And you can buy another power cord. The power cords are $56 or something like that, right? Yeah. Just trying to rip you off or something. Not you. Something like Chris. Oh. I don't know.
Margaret's waiting.
I was getting these emails. Hi, I'm the girl next door. You want to do? Yeah, no. It's like, what site did I go to? For crying out loud.
I didn't even go to a site. Having an account on Gmail or wherever.
Yeah.
It's crazy. We actually get some of those through the IT. Somehow they get through.
Yeah.
Every now and then. Hey, IT team, you want to join us? Come on.
Yeah.
And then there was rain.
Yeah. You were the only one here for a while last week.
So, okay, if I'm a little pickle smelling, which I think I'm okay, there was no soap in the bathroom. I'm just saying.
It smells so awful.
Just a smidgen.
It's super strong, like hand sanitizer smell all around the office today.
Oh, that might be neat.
Someone did some extra cleaning or something.
Not much.
I'm wearing really
nothing. The smell usually is bacteria
Yeah.
on your skin when you're biking and stuff. So if you put that stuff over you, I didn't do it though, but that will kill it like that.
Huh.
Yeah. So that's what that's I saw the greatest movie last night. Like real Arrival is amazing.
Oh, that new one, yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those movies where I can't even tell you one scene of the story.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, but it's so well played out, and the concepts in it are so good, and it's mashed together so well. Even though some of the basic things are the same old stuff,
Yeah.
they did it so well. You didn't.
Done
It
well.
wasn't until the end of the movie where you go, well, some of it was kind of the similar stuff. Aliens show up, and and how people react and what kind of stuff. But that came off not so much like the same old story, but like a truism. It's the same old story because it's a truism.
Okay.
And that's how it came off, and acting was just superior. Beautifully shot too, like one of those things that was just gorgeous.
Quiet. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Shelter in Edmonton. I'm told I have to look at the camera and not behind me, so good morning. Today, Wednesday, November 16th. And we're into winter. Awesome. Had to come eventually. So, a couple of announcements, actually a few announcements. First one, there is a Lunch and Learn November 28th. Oh, first off, welcome Shelter and welcome Edmonton. No, Red Deer doesn't hook in, do they? Okay, so lunch and learn, November 28th. Crystal, you want to talk about that? Where'd Crystal go? There you are.
Really, this is just a reminder for all staff to come out to that lunch and learn. It's going to be on a Monday, so we'll get started at 11:45 in the 1010 Common Room. There will be lunch. It'll be chicken on the way. If anyone has other dietary needs, Tiffany, who is our new Christmas coordinator with the Volunteer Resources team, will be taking care of that. So she'll come and survey you. If for some reason you want to email her, go ahead and do that as well. And we are working to organize some rides for people at the shelter to come to that as well. If for some reason you can't come due to your work schedule, I know that we're also trying to make sure that information gets to those individuals as well.
Thanks, Crystal. Chicken on the way, yum. I heard their corn fritters are amazing, actually. Edmonton staff Christmas parties, November 30th. It's going to be at the Bourbon Room in St. Albert, and it will be a lovely lunch. There's going to be painting, door prizes, and it's going to start at 11:15 and go till about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So hopefully those folks from Edmonton will be there. Calgary Red Deer Christmas party, December 2nd. It is going to be at First Alliance Church, and there's a comedy group called the Panic Squad coming in. So I think everything is up in Portal at the moment, so you can sign up through Eventbrite. So please RSVP as soon as possible. Turkey Ham Jam, December 3rd, which is a Saturday. Food drive is taking place to collect turkeys, hams, chickens. I think we even take cash if people are willing to donate that way. Looking for volunteers. There's 4-hour shifts. I didn't do it last year. I did it the year before, and I had a ball. Lots of fun, lots of opportunity to talk to people that are coming into the grocery stores about the mustard seed and what we do here. So all to raise those turkey, hams, chickens to be used at Christmas time. So 6 co-op locations, family, friends, kids, all are welcome to do that. So again, I think you let volunteer services know. Is that right? About that if you'd like to sign up. Rewrite your story. Where's David?
There's a lot of announcements, so I'll be quick. Edmonton, you guys can definitely get in on this. I've emailed them, and Red Deer. Most of you probably remember the last time I got up here and spoke. It was just about a month ago. We talked about rewrite your story. I'm really encouraging all of our staff members to get stories from residents, guests, clients, or even coworkers about how God is helping you rewrite your story. So this is a sample of what the posters are going to look like. We're going to get lots of different kinds and shapes, and some of them won't have any stories on it. They'll just be trying to invoke people to tell stories. But I want this place to be filled with positive stories of how God is helping people change their lives. That's really what Christmas is all about, in my opinion. And I think if we have these posters hanging and guests come through here, it kind of inspires them that there is hope. There is something that can happen in my life, and God can help me. The things that have happened in my past do not have to define me or my future. And I've already got this one here, which is really cool, and it's very inspiring. You can see that it's just a couple of paragraphs. They can be as simple as a 1-line, 2-line thing with a completely anonymous, like no names or anything, but we're also going to try to get some playing as videos on the screens. So if people want to be as public as that, we'll have them on the website as well, and the newsletter. I really want everyone around this organization to get behind this. So if you have clients that you think would like to talk about it, you can email them to me, email the stories to me, or send the people to me, or just give me a call and I'll go visit the person, whatever you want. But I want this place to truly be filled with hope stories, with stories that inspire people that come through these halls, that God can do something powerful if we give him the opportunity. So please keep this in mind. We're running out of time to get the stories, so let's get on it. Thank you. 2 minutes. 20 seconds.
No.
In that case.
I also think Samantha has something to say.
So I actually will be quick, not David's version of quick, real quick. So myself, John, Deb, and Katie Johnston, I don't know if she's here, at the beginning of November went to London, Ontario for the Canadian Alliance to End Homelessness Conference, which was incredible. So since we spent the money as an organization to do that, we're going to put on what we're calling Lunch and Learns. It seems like a popular phrase these days. We're going to put those on the second Thursday of every month. So the first 2 months will be January and February, and those will be about the CAEH conference. Following that, we want to keep this up, and we're going to be looking for staff to be putting on Lunch and Learns as well. So it'll just be in the common room in the 1010 for an hour, just to chat about what you're doing here at the Seed or what you've learned at conferences, etc. So I'll be sending out save the dates for calendars, January. Thanks.
Thank you, Samantha.
No lunch for that.
No lunch, so brown bag lunch and learn. Cookies?
Sorry.
Okay. Lots of fiber in that brown bag, though. Okay. Next week, our very own Brandon Wardenberg, Brandon W., is going to be speaking at Faith Connect, so look forward to that. He's always got some wonderful stories to share. Thanks. So this week, Dr. John Rook, our very own, is going to be speaking. I'm sure most people know John, but those who don't, John is the Director of Strategic Initiatives, sits on the executive team. And there's not a lot that we know about John. Okay, I know more. Maybe you guys don't. One, did you guys know that John actually was a runner in the National Masters team? Pretty fit guy. Doesn't look bad for 90. John also used 11 languages when he wrote his doctrine. Is that right? That's right. 11 languages. Pretty impressive. Now, he doesn't speak all those languages, but he knows how to write them. So I was pretty impressed. But be careful on some of the words. He knows them. Today's John is going to be talking to us about a cold cup of water, or a cup of cold water. And we'll go from there.
Thank you, Margaret. I'm going to be a bit more formal than I was last time, but here we go. And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes, and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." He was old and dirty and toothless, and his beard was covered with frost. It was January. The wind was howling, and it was already at 3 p.m. It was minus 18. It dropped to minus 26 that night. The shelter where I was working was already full. The foyer in the shelter was overflowing, and we were looking at using the chapel as sleeping area for people that night. It was a stormy night, and it had been for about 48 hours. His name was Daryl. I'd never seen him before, and when he came in, his face struck me. He looked so cold, but with all the obvious chaos that had cluttered his life, he still had a kind face. We were short-staffed that day because of the storm, and I wasn't doing my normal CEO work. I was on the floor. So I approached him and suggested that we should go into the dining room and have a coffee. He perked up and followed me into the dining area. Sitting on a chair beside me, he held the styrofoam cup like it was bone china. I told him that I was sorry that we were full, and we were trying to make contact with the other shelters to see if there were any available beds. That's when, to my surprise, he said to me, "Well, I'm in good company as a homeless person. Foxes have holes. Birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man had nowhere to lay his head." Daryl and I became friends. Over the time we spent together, he told me about his schooling, his short time in a seminary, as he wanted to be a priest. And he told me about meeting Sylvia, the most beautiful woman I've ever seen, he would always say, and he eventually married her. He told me of working in the oil fields and longing for his days off so he could come back to Calgary to his beautiful Sylvia. They had 2 boys. She had an affair. He started using cocaine. Soon he was in the homeless and prison systems without hope and without a home. And now, without anyone in his life, here he was. You know, he said, there's only one letter difference between homeless and hopeless. And if you put those letters together, what do you have? So I like words, right, Margaret? And I said MP. And he said, you're absolutely right. Or PM. And I believe that the PM and the MPs can solve this homeless mess if they want to. We need to have hope, and we need to have homes. And then he added, do you know what I want my MP to be? I said I couldn't guess. He put his hands above his head, and he drew a roof. And he said, MP for me, I want it to be my place. That was his answer. A few nights ago, my wife was away, and my son Cole wanted to watch a movie with me. He picked The Giver. Has anybody seen it? The Giver? A couple people. I very much enjoyed it, and here's a synopsis for those of you who haven't seen it. The Giver is written from the point of view of Jonas. Jonas is an 11-year-old boy who lives in a futuristic society that has eliminated all pain, all fear, all war, and all hatred. Sounds like the U.S., doesn't it? On the surface, that sounds pretty good. There's no prejudice, since everyone looks and acts basically the same, and there's very little competition. Everyone is unfailingly polite. I can't tell you how many times people said this, and it drove me crazy, but people said, I accept your apology. I accept your apology. The society, though, has also eliminated choice. At the age of 12, every member of the community is assigned a job based on his or her abilities and interests. Citizens can apply for and be assigned a compatible spouse, and each couple is assigned exactly 2 children. Sounds like China. The children are born to birth mothers, but the birth mothers never see their babies. They spend their first year in a nurturing center with other babies, or as they call them, new children. All those new children are born in the same year. When their children are grown, family units dissolve and adults live together with childless adults until they are too old to function in the society. Then they spend their last years being cared for in what the movie called the House of the Old, until they are finally released from society. Now, we would call that release from society death. But it's never described that way. Because most people think that after release, these flawed new children and the joyful elderly people are welcomed into the vast expanse of elsewhere that surrounds the communities. Citizens who break rules or fail to adapt properly to the society's codes of behavior are also released, though in their case, that's an occasion of great shame. Everything is planned, everything is organized, so that life is as convenient and pleasant as possible. Now, I won't say more about it, but as you can see, it's a bit like George Orwell's book, 1984, A Future World. But this one is supposed to be perfect. One line in the movie really struck me, and it made me think of Daryl. In this so-called perfect world, the giver says to Jonas, a dwelling is not a home is more. Let me say that again and reflect on this as we continue. A dwelling is not a home is more. I might want to say, Brandon, a shelter is not a home is more. Now, I believe that Canada is at a critical juncture. The blinders are off. Homelessness and poverty are out of the closet. For policymakers and influencers everywhere, for church leaders, for laity, and indeed for us, I say to all of you, dare to make a change. Indeed, dare to be the change. Not for 1 second should we be fooled into thinking that this journey will be easy. It is a rough road. The likes of Stephen Lewis and David Suzuki know this very well. The likes of our current Pope, the amazing words of Martin Luther King, Nelson Mandela, and Maya Angelou ring true. You cannot listen to these giants speak without coming away different. I might say even rattled when you hear them speak. They do not mince their words, and neither should we. Darrell was a wise man. He was very well read. He had 2 university degrees, with an addiction, with a severe mental illness, with little hope, without a home, with only broken relationships to torment his mind. And he could quote Maya Angelou poems like this one. Lying, thinking last night, how to find my soul a home where water is not thirsty and bread loaf is not stone. I came up with one thing, and I don't believe I'm wrong, that nobody, but nobody, can make it out here alone. Now, if you listen closely, I'll tell you what I know. Storm clouds are gathering, the wind is going to blow. The race of man is suffering, and I can hear the moan, 'cause nobody, but nobody, can make it here alone. All alone, all alone. Nobody, but nobody can make it here alone. Experience teaches us that solving homelessness and poverty and the insecurity that worries so many Canadians and costs us all so much requires a national coordinated effort. Each order or level of government, as well as business, community, special interest groups, not-for-profit, churches, families, individuals, we all need to come together. We all need to be able to work together. Now, those of you who know me a little bit know that I like Twitter, right? If you watch the right people in 140 characters or less, you can learn some amazing things. I watch people in organizations that tweet about government, poverty, homelessness, children, domestic violence, and so on. A few days ago, there was a tweet about why socks aren't enough. So that caught my attention. Attached to that tweet was a fabulous article about who feels good when socks and food is given to a homeless person. The conclusion was, it's the giver. Of course, people like Darrell need socks and food, but that in itself will never, ever solve the systemic problem. The article went on to say that what is needed and why it's so hard for us to wrap our heads around the concept. In the few minutes remaining today, let's see if we can figure it out. And I think most of you already are on the journey to figuring it out. For a while, and Margaret didn't say this, but I had the privilege of chairing the National Council of Welfare. It was an Ottawa position. I reported to the Minister of Human Resources and Social Development, and all of our reports went to all the Parliament. It was pretty cool, but that's another story for another time. But in the National Council of Welfare's report, the last major report that I was a part of, it was entitled Solving Poverty, 4 Cornerstones for a Workable National Strategy for Canada. We laid out our best advice on the approach that is needed. It's larger than a policy description because as much as solving poverty is about housing or childcare, it's also about governance. The Solving Poverty report grew out of frustration that poverty and related issues like homelessness were not even on the political radar screen in Canada, especially federally, despite its prominence and its international agenda. It grew as well out of the detailed tracking of poverty and welfare income stats that we at the National Council had published for a quarter of a century. That quarter of a century had been marked by ups and downs, but overall, and despite a very strong economy, we are barely back to where we started. If you are a welfare recipient or a minimum wage earner, odds are that today you are worse off than someone who was a minimum wage worker or a welfare recipient 25 years ago. That should shock us. Where working age people and children are concerned, the Council generally had to look outside Canada to find experience and progress on poverty. To be very brief, what we found in Europe and in other parts of the world, and at home in two provinces, Quebec and Newfoundland Labrador, is that there's a commonality in that their approaches are holistic, coordinated, and inclusive, and based on good governance and common sense. There are many examples of how this works in Newfoundland and Labrador. This province has an amazing poverty reduction strategy, and they link issues and dimensions of people's lives in a conceptual way, like understanding the connection between poverty, violence, and gender. And then they link government ministries in a pragmatic way to get action items, to get things done. However, in spite of what we see in Newfoundland and Labrador and in Quebec, it appears that there is no common agenda between the levels of government. When the National Council did some further research into anti-poverty strategies, this time we looked at the municipal level, we were struck by the energy and innovation in some cities, especially those connected with the multi-stakeholder group called Vibrant Communities. And in Calgary, we have one of those run by the amazing Franco Savoia. But it also struck us that they were struggling to fill the gaps created by the absence or inadequacies of more senior orders of government. This is confirmed in a comprehensive Senate study that was done by two senators, Senator Art Eggleton and the former Senator Hugh Segal. But in my final few minutes, I'd like to tell you what I see in Calgary. Calgary is evidence that a strong economy without a coordinated policy strategy for people is not a good recipe for a healthy society. Calgary is a fascinating study of the dichotomy between extreme wealth and abundance, growing side by side with deepening and highly visible poverty, homelessness, and exclusion. While Canada's homeless numbers are not exactly known, we hear the staggering figure of 150,000 people in Canada who are homeless on any given day. In September, a report was released by the University of Calgary that labeled Calgary as the most expensive city in Canada for a poor person to live. As of April 2014, the Calgary Housing Company had an affordable housing waiting list of 3,329 families, an amount that has likely increased given the recent economic conditions. The Calgary Mortgage and Housing Corporation estimates that the problem is significantly worse than this. They estimate that at least 42,000 households in Calgary are in core housing need. That means spending more than 50% of your annual income on housing. And I know some of our staff are in that category as well. Calgary's last absolute homeless count identified 3,500 homeless people on a single night. That number doesn't even include those who belong in the hidden homeless population, people who couch surf, people who avoid getting caught by the bylaw officers and others who are searching for them on that night. Well, the claim is made that in the past 6 years or so, over 6,000 people have been housed in Calgary. The fact remains that almost no dent has been made in the number of homeless Calgarians. And when you move from homeless to poverty, the Calgary numbers are even more bleak. Over 23,000 people, families in our city, that's Calgary, and you can look at Red Deer and Edmonton too, but over 23,000 families in this city are in core housing need, in serious trouble, one paycheck away from being homeless. And many of those people in those 23,000 are children. The numbers who use homeless shelters in Calgary annually is approaching 20,000 unique individuals. Our Calgary shelters, as we know, are close to full every night. And what do? We come up with winter response plans, and we add beds and try to figure out what to do. On nights when the temperature drops into the low teens, staff in some shelters will be sleeping people in overflow chairs and in cots on the floor and so on. One year, the shelter I worked in before I came here, we had a boot drive, a winter boot drive, where people could line up for a pair of winter boots. We had 600 boots that year. They were all gone in no time. But we advertised that event to get a pair of winter boots would start at 1:30 p.m. By 11 a.m., the lineup was almost 3 blocks long. In from the Cold is right beside us. It's our program for homeless families, and they can't keep up. One woman in Calgary, and this is staggering to me, birthed a baby in a hospital. In from the Cold was full, and she and her wee baby spent their very first night after hospital discharge on a basement floor in a church. Oh yes, and dare I mention that Calgary got a new Bentley car dealership a few years ago. I checked the website recently, and the price for a new Bentley wasn't listed. But there were 18 used Bentleys. The price ranged from a low of $99,000 to a high for a used Bentley of $476,000. So when someone who works full day, a full-time job in Calgary on minimum wage makes $24,000 a year, I think something seriously wrong in our world. I was talking about CEO salaries on Twitter a few weeks ago. Do you know that we have CEOs in Canada that make more than $48,000 a day? That reminds me of a famous quote by Henry Ford. Paying good wages is not charity at all. It is the best kind of business. The issue with minimum wage versus living wage is really important, but we'll leave that for another time. Often with homelessness, you hear the language of Skid Row. Everybody heard that? Skid Row? Especially in California, you hear that. But as I work in this field, I'm struck by how much homelessness is like waiting on death row. Although we live in a country that does not support capital punishment, homeless people, poor people, are on a death row of impoverishment, inadequate housing, and the wait. Homeless people, poor folk, wait for everything. They wait for food, they wait for a room, they wait for a shelter bed, they wait for a doctor, they wait for a pair of boots, they wait for a chance at a job, they wait to hear another no, they wait for death itself. But unlike death row in a prison, you do not have to commit a crime to be sentenced to the death row of homelessness, the death row of hopelessness, the death row of despair. And across Canada, we've built institutions called shelters that are often so prison-like that are just designed to hold people until they die. So what can we do? I think we can listen to God's call and respond. And those of you who are in this room have. People like you, and we need more of you, have given your life to this service. There are people in this and every church who've answered the call to missionary service, to working with homeless friends, to teaching in our schools, and to running for political office. Those are things we can do. There are others, like organizations called Kairos, Citizens for Public Justice. We can join those groups. We can lobby government to change the systems. That's something we can do. There are many other things we can do, but it's already 10:30, and I want to finish with one last thing. It seems to me that in this world of poverty, which surrounds us, in which we live, in which we work, the big problem is broken relationships. As with Daryl, there are broken relationships with family, with friends, with community, with government, with God, and even with ourselves. Our future thinking in every corner of our work must be advocacy, programming, poverty reduction strategies, and so on. But we must be singularly focused on restoring relationships. If we take that as our rallying point, humbly, respectfully, and with passionate resolve, we will and we can change the value structure. I love what Vice President Joe Biden said once. He said, "Don't tell me your values. Show me your budget. I'll tell you your values." Those are wise words that should cause us to reflect on how we spend money and on what we do. Poverty is not partisan. Poverty is political. As Canadians and as people of faith, we can join together in a harmonious union, in step with each other. This purposeful dance will transform the world. It is up to those who want to govern a country to aspire to making that vision a reality, to be ambitious, to aim high, and to truly govern well. Now let me close. I believe God has called us to do something about it. The cup of cold water is ours to share in His name. A children's book by Emily McKeon is about people at a dance. The princesses of Wesolopalooza invite everyone to a party, and everybody wants to dance with the princess. The book asks, but who will dance with the rhino? The rhino's not pretty. The rhino's rather large, a bit awkward, and certainly not in the in crowd at the party. And we're asked to dance today. Will we dance with the princess, or will we dance with the rhino? I hear the family sleeping in a car that just left the reserve saying, "Will you dance with me?" I hear the woman in a Iqaluit who are turned away from a shelter because it's minus 40 and there are no female beds left, saying, "Who will dance with us?" I hear the children whose only dream is for some food in a school where school isn't even a possibility as they scavenge for food in a Nairobi or a Colombian garbage dump, saying, "Who will dance with us?" I hear folks in the food bank line saying, "Who will dance with us?" And I hear that woman and the baby who slept on the Calgary church basement saying, "Who will dance with us?" I hear homeless Daryl, broken, lost, alone, wanting only a cup of water, saying, "Who will dance with us?" Will you come to the dance with me?
Thanks, John. Let's pray. God of abundant life, recall us to the truth that every person was created and called and gifted by you. We remember before you those who suffer the hardship and heartache that come with homelessness, unemployment, addictions, mental illness, and broken relationships, who search but find life one brokenness after another, and whose gifts and energies are undervalued. Support and strengthen them and their families. Keep hopelessness and bitterness of mind and spirit at bay. Nurture their relationships and keep strong their bodies and souls. And as we come to serve here through the mustard seed in Edmonton, Red Deer, and Calgary, give us the wisdom to help and support in ways that are needed and thoughtful. And in your love, direct those with power in government and in the churches to build a society marked by inclusiveness and abundant living, so that all may be set free from anxiety and fear, to live with dignity and peace and security, so that all may contribute to the public good. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Thank you.